Words matter. What you write down on a page can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. For example, let's say that your mom texts you, "I think that's a great idea." Well, there's a lot of ways that you could take that. You could take it, first of all, as Mom's giving me permission to do what I want. But your mom might have thought that a certain part of what you said was a great idea, maybe not all of it. She might be being sarcastic, and she may not mean that it's a great idea at all. There's a lot of different ways to take that phrase. Here's another example. Just do what you want. If your mom texts you that, what does that mean? Does it really mean you can do literally whatever you want? Does it mean that she's frustrated with you because you're not listening to her? What does it actually mean? Well, there's a lot of ways to interpret that phrase. As Americans, we have the same problem with the Constitution, and there are some specific phrases in the Constitution that over the years have caused lots of arguments as people try to figure out what those phrases actually mean. And the truth is that over time, as America has changed and become more modern, we have changed the meaning of these words. The word commerce refers to trade. So the Commerce Clause in the Constitution is referring to the fact that the United States government has the power to regulate trade with foreign nations. The Commerce Clause has been stretched beyond all recognition. Now, the Congress uses this clause to justify laws that force businesses to follow all sorts of regulations. Businesses have to abide by environmental regulations, employee regulation, tax regulations, advertising regulations, all sorts of things, and these are all justified by the Commerce Clause. During the Obama presidency, a law was passed by Congress called the Affordable Health Care Act. The Affordable Health Care Act required each person in America to purchase health care. Now, there were lots of people who argued that they did not have the constitutional authority because they were forcing somebody to buy something. However, this law was justified using the Commerce Clause, saying that what they were really doing was regulating the insurance business, and that's how they were able to pass. Another example of the Commerce Clause is the interstate system. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the United States government has a right to build roads all over the country. But Congress justified it, saying that it was important in order to regulate commerce, they had to have roads that went through the country, and thus we have the interstate system. In Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, there are 17 powers listed. These powers are the things that Congress has the authority to do. But the 18th power is the Necessary and Proper Clause. That one says that Congress has the ability to make laws, other laws, that allow them to carry out the 17 original powers. Today, this clause is known as the Elastic Clause. The reason it's the Elastic Clause is because it has been stretched beyond all recognition of the original intent. Originally, the founders argued that this was to allow government to just have a little bit of flexibility. But over time, government has used this to justify many laws that essentially have no justification in the Constitution. In the Constitution, the United States government has the power to manage currency. However, it does not have the power to manage banks. Well, there was a big problem. The banks needed regulating, and so the United States government began to use the Necessary and Proper Clause and say, well, in order to regulate money, we have to regulate banks. And so this was stretched beyond its original meaning. Another example of the Necessary and Proper Clause being stretched was with the purchase of Louisiana, the Louisiana Purchase, which was done in the Thomas Jefferson's administration. Well, there was nothing in the Constitution that said that the United States could purchase land. That doesn't exist in there. And so they used the Necessary and Proper Clause to justify this purchase and to say we have the power of doing that. Since the time of the writing of the Constitution, the Elastic Clause has been stretched beyond all recognition. The government now uses that clause to argue that it can regulate pretty much everything in American life. Now, some would argue that this is a good thing. It means that our government is flexible and able to change with the times. Others argue that it means that we are abandoning our former principles of very limited government. Words matter, and how you interpret words matters. There are lots of disagreements in America right now, and there always has been and always will be. And one of the things we disagree about is how to interpret the Constitution. How do you take these words and figure out what they mean? And this is one of the reasons why our Supreme Court is so important, because one of their jobs is to help interpret the Constitution and bring unification to our country.